Welcome to another episode of the Clay News and Views podcast. Today, I am very excited to have with me Tom Centracchio. Mr. Centracchio, thank you, first of all, for coming on the show. Secondly, tell people a little bit about you. Who are you?
I'm a person who's lived in Florida for 22 years now, originally from Massachusetts, and I came to Green Cove Springs 9 years ago. I didn't come here because I wanted to come to Green Cove Springs, but the lady who I met and who I'm married to lived in Green Cove Springs at the time, and we were dating, and I visited her at her home, and she took me to the park. At that time, the park was just in construction. It wasn't done yet, but she was concerned that she'll kill me for saying this, but anyway, she was concerned that I wouldn't like it because it was a little town. But I absolutely fell in love with Green Cove Springs, as well as my wife. She's an angel from God, by the way. Anyway, we have a nice little house in Green Cove Springs, and we're very happy there. And that's how I wound up in Green Cove Springs.
Okay. So for people listening that may not know, you are running for Green Cove Springs City Council. So you've been here a long time. Like you said, you fell in love with the city of Green Cove Springs. The city council can be a little bit of a thankless job. What makes you want to run for city council?
Well, initially, I had no interest in city council whatsoever, but a good friend of mine started having me go to the city council meetings. This was back in April of last year, and I went to meetings. I never spoke at the meetings. I sat there. I watched the interplay between the people on the council. Also, the votes. The votes were all 5-0. Well, I come from a large Italian family. There's eight kids in the family. I've never sat around a table yet where even three of us could agree on anything. So the 5-0 votes disturbed me. And what happened was a friend of mine ran for city council, and I did some work for her, especially on the salary part of the because I knew a little bit about that. Anyway, I went to the meetings and I still didn't speak. But when they had the budget in September, they had like a day where everybody could go and give their input and everything. And I spoke for the first time, and they weren't too happy with what I had to say. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, one person took a thing and held it up like this and said, this is what the salary should be, and we got to get up to the 50 percentile and everything. And evidently that person just went to the meeting with all these figures. By the way, they had paid for a study to give them all these figures. I think they paid $38,000 or $40,000 for that. But the fact of the matter is that all employees that work for the government, their salaries are on the internet.
Right.
I had the salary of every single person, including people that only worked there for 1 day or 2 days, and I presented those things, and they just weren't happy with it. And it seemed like everything I watched people go before the council many times, and most of what they said fell on deaf ears. It's hard to go up there and see somebody who's worked their whole life, and then because of all the tax increases and the way water increase and the electric increase, they're barely getting by. And they present that, they say to the council, well, on 2 occasions, council members said, well, we have people you can go talk to and they'll help you with that. Well, that's not really something that somebody who's worked their whole life wants to hear. I mean, it's not, I understand if you're starting out, and a lot of people need help, and some very good friends of mine have needed help. But so I continued on, and it went into the fall, and a good friend of mine who was considering running for the council couldn't make his mind up. So just one morning I woke up, and it was like, I don't know what happened. I feel like I've been directed to do this by God. I really do. But anyway, we were walking, and I said, if you're not going to run for the council, I'm going to run, and will you support me? And he said yes, and that's how I got involved. That's
Okay.
a long story, but it's true.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's good. More. I think, the goal of these interviews and the ones I've already done is to let people who might vote for you hear from you, right? And I think that's good for them to hear that. So it sounds like you have the same opinion that I do with not only Green Cove, but I look at the school board and the county commissioners. The majority of the 5-0 votes bother me, right? And what bothers me more than the 5-0 vote is that a lot of times there's not really any debate or discussion, right? It's one thing to come to a consensus to talk out an issue and say, hey, I think, even if I don't think this is the best thing, I'm going to vote for it because it's the solution we have for, whatever issue. And I think, yeah, I'd like to see more robust debate and dissent on some of the things across all of the governing bodies here in Clay County. So what are some of the issues that you think Green Cove is facing that you think maybe you can help with as a city council member?
Well, there's a lot of issues, but the two biggest issues are the budget and the interplay between the parties and the citizens of the community. My viewpoint on that is that if I'm on the city council, I'm the employee, the people are the employer.
Yeah, I think good leadership, whether it's elected or whatever, is really service to the people that you're leading, right? Like the city council and the county commissioners are there to serve the people and make sure that what we're paying via taxes comes back to us in the services and the other things that we expect. I don't know. I do think for the most part, I think most of our elected officials operate from that mindset, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the government in general really cares as much about people as I feel like it ought to. I don't know. How do you feel? Do you think that we should? Do you think we need to care a little more about people? Like, is it that the government's not listening? Like, what would you do different? I guess.
Well, I think the part of the problem is that people who've worked in the government haven't had any experience in working in public corporations and
Right.
everything. It's an entirely different thing. But, in government, there's like feel entitled, and there's no entitlement in business. Most of it is, you either do the job or they get somebody who can do the job.
Right. Green Cove. What do you think's going well?
Number one, it's a absolutely beautiful little community. It's changing, but the changes I view Green Cove as like an oasis. I see most of the development's gonna come down on 17 toward the expressway, on 16 toward the expressway, and I see some development in Green Coves, but I don't see that as the way it's the way a lot of people view it now. It's gonna be this booming area and everything. The fact of the matter is that since 2020, the population's only grown 2.2%. And now maybe 10 years from now or maybe 20 years from now, that's gonna grow a lot bigger. But right now, you have to spend the money that you have. You can't spend money based upon what you think is gonna come in. There's a development of houses and, called the Rookery, and they're talking about this is gonna bring in all this money and everything. Well, that's fine, but show me the money. You
Right.
can't spend the money till you have it. But Green Cove it's a the park is one of the nicest parks around. It's a small community. It's only 10,000 plus people. And the people that have been living there for a long time, they don't want to lose that. They don't want the thing to just, different people have different ideas. But the fact of the matter is that a business to come into that community, they have to do business and make a profit. They're not going to come there because we want to have a business come there. I mean, I understand how people feel, but businesses are going to go where they make the money.
Yep. Do you feel like, I've heard from some business owners that the restrictions and the taxes and some of the regulation within the city makes it very unfriendly to businesses. And that's part of the reason that you don't see a lot of businesses coming into the city. Would you agree with that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things I've done is I've couple things, one involving citizens and one involving businesses. I've been going around and just talking to people. In fact, I've talked to some people who have gone before the council, both citizens and business, and haven't really been treated right. And I don't understand the attitude. If you want to get a business into a city, you have to treat them right
Right.
and be expedient in what you do with them. For instance, a small business coming into a city and people have small businesses are the heart of the country,
Yep.
really. And they have ideas of what they want to do, but what they don't have is a big pot of money sitting there. They have a limited amount of time before they can, from where they start until they start bringing money into the business. And if they sit there and they can't do it for 6 months or so, number one, they're not going to come there, or number two, they're not going to be in business.
Yeah. So I do think the city, I personally, this is me talking, I think that the city of Green Cove needs to look at some of their regulations and just some of the onerous things that they're putting. I know of a couple situations, but I don't know if those people want me to out it. But I know there's a situation right now where a person is trying to do some pretty robust development within the city of Green Cove, and they're having a very hard time navigating a lot of just the little ticky tacky regulations and rules that the city has in place. So, as a business owner, like you said, you're going to go where you can make the most money with the least resistance, right? Like Clay County is not the only county that's growing in Florida. Green Cove is not the only area within Clay County that's growing. So there's lots of options. There's competition for business right now amongst all these communities, and the business owners are going to go where they can make the most money because that's how it works.
Well, there's one person on the council right now, Darren Stutz, that's carrying the flag for business, and he has got some movement. But I can tell you, if I get on there, there'll be a lot more movement
That's good.
because he would support me. I know he would, and he's told me he doesn't mind if I say that.
Uh,
So he has moved some businesses along that were, and I've heard from people, by the way, in some of these businesses, what the problem is. I just think they don't understand about business.
Yeah, it's like they don't understand, or part of me wonders if there's a little bit of gatekeeping. They want, you know,
I
they want
understand.
they want the right types of businesses, or they want some people, and I don't know for sure. And I'm not saying this happened in Green Cove, but I know in other areas, sometimes the government wants to do business with the people that they're friends with, right? And I wonder sometimes, like, is that what's going on? Because even but even if you flip that on its head, take that out of the picture. Clay News and Views has reported on the stormwater drain fee lawsuit that the city council is tied up with. A person was being charged tens of thousands of dollars for stormwater drainage, and they're not even hooked up to the drainage system. And the city tried to say, well, tough nuts, go pay it. What do you have any thoughts on that? Like,
Yes, I do have thoughts on that. First of all, I feel that's going to be settled very shortly. But I will say this, if I was on that council, it would have been settled even sooner, because how can you charge somebody for something that he's not even using?
yeah.
And he has his own stormwater system on premises. I don't know how they got to that point where it was a study. I don't understand how they reach those conclusions as to who to charge and who not to charge.
Yeah, I think that's just an example of the ego of bureaucracy. Sometimes they just don't want to admit they're wrong. Everybody who is not a city council member who has looked at that situation has looked at it and said it's clear cut. The person should not have to pay. They didn't use the service, right? It's like if you got a bill in the mail for like your cell phone plan, and there's three phones on there, and you're like, well, I didn't sign up for those. Like, well, technically, you're doing business with us, and we do this to all our other customers and whatever. Anyway, I digress. So good. Sounds like you have the common sense, obviously what I think is the right opinion on that whole nonsense. And then the other thing I hear a lot about is Reynolds Park, right? Down there, the on the water, the waterfront, big waterfront property that's down there. Your opponent believes that their property is underappraised, and therefore they're not paying enough taxes into the city, right? And I don't say that. I offer no opinion on that. I'm simply saying, in my interview with him that I did last week or the week before, I forget when it was, he talked about that extensively. He believes that my impression is that he believes that the business owner has the responsibility to develop their property in a way that benefits the city. Me, as a private property rights enthusiast, I don't know that I agree with that, right? If I own the property and I'm doing what I want with the property and I'm paying you the taxes you tell me to pay, I don't really have an obligation to do what the city thinks I ought to do. What are your thoughts on Reynolds Park?
I have been down there and talked to them, and there's been a lot of animosity in the last few years between individuals. And the bottom line is that's part of Green Cove Springs. And I believe that will be developed. It may take 20 years, it may 30 years, but you have to have a dialogue. That doesn't mean that you agree with everything going on, but you can't say, okay, these people don't exist, or call them names. So I think there's a lot of possibility down there. I sat down there and I can tell you everything that happened down there from 1945 until 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And I know that things have happened in the past, and I know, but you can't operate like that. You have a possible gold mine. The bottom line is that entrepreneurs will go into an area where they can make money, but it also benefits the city. I feel sometimes like Green Coast tries to grab a lot of money from people up front,
Yeah.
but they don't look at the big picture. They would make a lot more money if they'd be a little more favorable to people coming in.
Yeah, my thought on the city of Green Cove government, and this is not I'm not leveling this at any particular person, is they're a little more aggressive, it feels like, than some of the other municipalities or the county. Even in things like code enforcement on people's homes, right? There's some wacky code that like in your garage or carport, you can't have anything that isn't car related, right? And if you do, they'll fine you. So like me, I live out in sort of unincorporated Middleburg. In my garage, I have an old TV and an old couch. When the weather's nice, I don't have a back porch or a front porch, so my daughter and I sit out there, we watch TV, like I do stuff out in the garage. In the city of Green Cove Springs, that would get me fined, right? And I know at one point the city had some guy from somewhere up north, no offense, Yankees, if you're listening, that came in and was real aggressive on code enforcement and really upset a lot of folks. So I think they're aggressive towards the businesses. Sometimes they're aggressive towards the citizens, and so not only does the city government have there's animosity between the citizens and the government. There's animosity between the government and the businesses that are there and want to come in. At some point, the old adage applies: if everywhere you touch hurts, maybe your finger's broken. If everyone that I'm in a relationship with is mad, maybe I'm the one causing people to be mad. So sometimes I do think that the city of Green Cove needs to look in the mirror a little bit.
I think the code enforcement has been used as a weapon a lot of times.
Yeah.
Somebody doesn't like somebody but if you go into, there's a couple certain areas, there's homeowners associations. If you go in other areas, there's every house in the entire neighborhood is different. If you go back, the code enforcement, if you go back, you can find probably uh, a major or some sort of a violation in almost every single home in the city. I
Mhm.
mean, you have to either do it to everybody or do it to nobody. It doesn't make any sense what they're doing in area.
Yeah, and the rules should make sense, right? Like the rules shouldn't be arbitrary or, like there should be the community should get some benefit from the rule other than just giving the government the ability to lord a rule over someone's head and say you broke this rule, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I agree with you there. Again, I think it's just if you're a business owner, right? If you think of it from a standpoint of a business, I'm selling services, right? And the city government is providing services to the citizens. So it's sort of the same relationship. People want to do business and they want to deal with things and companies that are easy to do business with. And sometimes, from the outside looking in, I'm not a resident of Green Cove. It seems like the city of Green Cove is not easy to do business with. And I think that's a shame because it's a beautiful area. And I just think it's a shame.
I think you're correct in what you say.
Yeah, so let's pivot a little bit, right? So we've talked about things we think could be better or could go different. If you tomorrow were given control over the future of the city of Green Cove Springs, what would an ideal future for the city look like for you?
Well, I'd attack it from several viewpoints. Number one, the zoning and planning has got to be more friendly to everybody, to
Yep.
citizens, to people coming in there. And that starts at the top. If you go into public supermarket, everybody's friendly in there. Yeah, the prices may be a little high. I mean, we shop there sometimes, but we kind of cherry pick the place. But anyway, why are they friendly? Because the CEO says that's what you're going to do. Zoning and planning, the city manager has to set the precedent and say, this is the way it's going to be. You are going to you can't always say yes to people, but they should always be treated friendly and with courtesy and respect. As far as the city goes, the number one priority to me would be to look at the budget. We have to go, and I have Darren Stutz is on this. I think if the two of us together can push this and get it through, we have to go to a line item budget, go right down to the bottom and see where we stand. If you look at all the increases in the last few years, they don't make any sense at all. They're far, far higher than what's happened as far as growth in the city. The tax rates have gone through the roof. The water rates have gone through the roof. I mean, I have figures here that I can read off. It maybe bore you, but they're all true. They're not made up by me. These are true figures. And even the number of employees has to be looked at because we've gone from 99 employees to 135 or so in a short period of time. And it's not justified, depending on in relationship to the growth of the city.
Yeah. And it's
So,
nothing, and that's nothing about the people doing those jobs. It's just the government has an obligation to spend the money it gets wisely, right? And sometimes that's
right,
looking at
right.
headcount and saying,
Well, it would be like if you did a room in your house over and you spent $5,000 on the room. And next year, you're looking at the budget for your house. You don't start with $5,000. That was last year's budget. You start with zero and you go from there. I
right.
mean, it's gonna. We went to a budget meeting. It lasted 10 hours, and then we left after 10 hours and 2 hours. We came back the next day. They said it was all settled. They didn't need to do anymore. And it went on after that for a couple of months nitpicking stuff to decide what the millage rate was going to be and everything. But the basic budget was done in 10 hours. That should have been at least 4 or 5 days of concentrated effort.
Yeah, you would think because we're talking millions of dollars, right? So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do think, and I'm not saying Green Cove does this, but I know that some of the entities, they make their budget confusing. They say it's because of statute. I feel like maybe sometimes it's on purpose. They make it hard for the average Joe to decipher, right? But it's really just, we got X amount of money. Here's what we spent that money on. Like
Mhm.
it when it boils down to it, it's just simple math. It's money in, money out. And I want more people, whether I live in Green Cove or not, I'd like to see more people on the Green Cove Springs City Council that look at it just like you said, like, hold on, we're starting over at zero and we got to justify every penny, not just assume that we should spend the same amount just because we did it last year. And another thing as far as headcount, like I was at a county commissioner workshop and they had a graph of number of employees in the county, and they arbitrarily picked 2007, the thing that they're comparing this year to. Well, 2007 was before the Great Recession. 2007 was pre-COVID. 2007 was pre a lot of innovations that have come out from a technology standpoint. So sometimes the government likes to cherry pick their measuring stick to say, well, we had this then, we should have it now.
That brings up a good point. We have a lot of qualified people in the city of Green Cove Springs that can help in these things. We have a good friend of mine is the ex-finance director. For years, she was the finance director, and she never had a budget that wasn't balanced. But I think I know some stuff about budgets. She knows a lot more than I do. And so I would go, instead of going out for all these studies and everything, I would go out and use the people we have. We have a gentleman in town who knows more about water and electricity than any person in Florida probably, but they don't use them. And there's other people. Instead of paying money for these studies, my answer to them is do your job. We have human resources. I'm not questioning the integrity or anything of the people, but we pay for a wage study. I could have gotten. You say you need a new lineman, right? Electrical lineman. Well, you can call 4 or 5 cities and get where you should be and take care of that in no time. You don't need a wage study to do that.
Right.
And the most important thing is not the wage study. It's not the lineman. It's what can the city of Green Cove Springs afford to pay. And that's what we have to do,
Right.
period.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about one thing I forgot to mention earlier before we got into the future of Green Cove. The bane of a lot of people's existence when they drive through Green Cove are the red light cameras. What are your thoughts on the red light cameras? Are you for them, against them? How do you feel about them?
Put me against the wall. No. I'm against the red light cameras. I lived in Palm Coast for a while, and they had them all over the place, and they wound up taking out most of them, and they couldn't take them all out because they had a contract with the red light company. I think boots on the ground is much more effective, and that can be argued. Right now, we only have 3. There are people who want to put more in Green Cove, but
Yeah.
I just don't think it's, you know,
I
I
personally am unconvinced by the data that's been provided. I don't know how you feel
right.
about the
Well, I'd like to. I haven't seen all the data, but I have a feeling there's a great deal of tractor trailer trucks and everything that go through Green Cove. So when a truck goes through, you can't identify who the driver is. So how do you ticket it? Well, they ticket the company, but that's
Well, and
I
then
have
the
a f
company doesn't have to pay. The companies
that's
never pay.
that's correct,
Yeah.
and so, the if I just think if you looked listen, I've gotten a couple of those tickets. I just pay them. I look at the look and most of the time, they're accurate, but, when you're coming to a light, sometimes it's a matter of if you jam on your brakes to stop, you're going too fast or something, you I think there's a lot of accidents that way, but I question who's paying and who's not paying. I think the citizens are paying most of the bills.
Yeah, I would wager from the data I've seen, it does appear that citizens are paying the most bills. There are a plethora of reasons that I am against the red light cameras. There's a constitutionality argument. There's all sorts of things. I'll have to introduce you to a man named Dave Coughlin, who's very knowledgeable about the red light cameras. But I also think it's problematic to let. So when you put a red light camera in, the city gets money from the red light cameras. Now a lot of it goes to the state and goes to wherever. But even that's so either the state or the city get a chunk of the money, and then the company that provides the cameras takes their fee. But then what happens is the Florida Department of Transportation and the local municipalities get to decide how long the green and yellow lights last, right? So there is risk, and I'm not saying anyone in Green Cove is doing this, but there is a risk that the government could then sort of rig the lights to generate more revenue. It becomes now a revenue generating lever for the government, which it shouldn't be. If the goal is to change behavior and make roads safer, then the money should not be an issue, right? So, but I think personally, most of the time, the red light cameras are a cash grab.
I think that's been done in some places, but I did check a couple lights, and I didn't find a difference in the you know,
Yeah.
for
Yeah, and I'm not saying that
but
that's
I've heard that
yeah, I'm not saying that's been done, but there is you have to sometimes with these systems, you have to set them up in a way where if the worst possible person you can think of got control of it, what harm could they do, right? And how do you prevent that sort of person from doing the harm, right? So, I'm hoping that one day the state will outlaw the red light cameras, but we'll see. I'm not going to hold my breath, but we'll see. All right, so I think we've covered quite a bit here. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything you think is important that the people at Green Cove know about?
Well, I can tell them that I'm gonna carry the flag for them, but I can't get to the top of the mountain unless they go out and vote, and they have a decision to make. The decision is if they want business as usual, then don't vote for me. If they want changes, positive changes, and I'm an open book, by the way. They can call me, come to my house, talk to me. I'll go out and talk to one person. Then I'm the person to vote for.
Okay.
And I love the city. I have my wife and I are like thrilled to be there. I'm not going to leave the city no matter what happens. This is it for us. My fellow citizens of Green Cove Springs, you have a choice to make. Business as usual with high electric rates, increasingly high tax increases, wastewater, stormwater, all to feed the tax and spend policies of city council, or to choose Tom Centracchio to represent a person that is for the people of Green Cove Springs and will return the city to responsible spending and civility to all, whether they agree or disagree. The city will grow, but with sound financial footing and not accumulating long-term debt that is not sustainable but put increased burdens on the citizens. Thank you. God bless you and God bless the people of Green Coves. And
Awesome.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
I,
thank you for coming on the show, man. I appreciate you making the time. And, I'll tell you what I tell every candidate. Best of luck at the polls.
thank you.